Tonight, we begin our interviews with candidates for state representative in the 14th Suffolk District, mainly including Hyde Park, Readville, and most of Roslindale. The district's currently represented by Angelo Scaccia, who's not running for re-election. Our guest is one of the candidates trying to succeed him in running in the Democratic primary on September 1st. We'd like to welcome a former city councilor and more recently chief of staff for the Boston School Department, Rob Consalvo. Thank you very much for being with us, Rob.
Thanks for having me.
Rob, one thing that stands out about you in this race is, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you're a lifetime resident of the district.
I am.
And at one point, a little back, you were an aide to Angelo Scaccia, but you're also presenting yourself as a bridge figure who can build coalitions. So take me from one end of that to the other.
Sure. Well, again, thanks so much for having me on the show. Really, I'm glad to be here. I'm really excited about being a candidate for the state representative for the 14th Suffolk District. I'm running for the seat because I still believe that government is about helping people. I think it's about making a difference in the lives of others. I really believe strongly that we need government that will work for all of the people, not just some of the people. And I am the candidate in this race who has the experience and the expertise, who can hit the ground running on the very first day. As a former Boston city councilor, all of the precincts that are in this district were in my city council district. So I've already worked on many of the issues that are important to this community. I know many of the leaders in this community and the residents. I've literally helped thousands of people in these neighborhoods on issues big and small. And so I just think that we need someone who has that experience. I think post-COVID, next January, when the new rep is sworn in, and hopefully it's me, I think experience counts, and I think it counts now more than ever. And we need someone who's going to be in this seat, who has the experience on all levels of government, who has the ability to build bridges, bring coalitions together, unite people, and also who's going to be there to solve issues big and small. I always talk about that I'm so blessed to have had the trifecta of public service experience on the federal, state, and city level. I got my start working for Senator Kennedy in both his Washington, D.C. and Boston office. And I hold many of the ideals that I learned from Senator Kennedy still today. I also worked in the State House for almost 6 years for Representative Scaccia. So I worked on, as a legislative aide, many of the issues that are important locally to the community, as well as I've worked on budget amendments, writing bills, and working on issues in the State House. And then, of course, I was so honored to be a 13-year member of the Boston City Council, representing one of the most diverse districts on the City Council, which I was so proud of, getting reelected 6 times in one of the most diverse districts on the City Council, and really serving this community as a District 5 City Councilor.
You also have experience with the city's agency for neighborhood development and homeowner programs. What about the housing concerns in this district? What do you like to do about it?
Yeah, housing is one of the top issues I talk about on the campaign. I was honored that after I left the city council to join Mayor Walsh's team and serve as deputy director of the Boston Home Center. The Home Center is the city's agency that helps people obtain, retain, and maintain their homes. Basic 3 areas of helping people become first-time home buyers, which is so important, helping people stay in their homes by preventing foreclosures, and then helping seniors and other folks stay in their homes through a home repair program. Many of our seniors are cash poor but house rich and need a lot of maintenance work done in their homes. The Boston Home Center provides funding to make critical home repairs for seniors to allow them to live in their homes. But the housing picture is so much bigger. We need more affordable housing so that folks who are being priced out of this city can live in, but we also need more home ownership opportunities. And we particularly need to make sure that we're providing more home ownership opportunities in communities of color. The foreclosure crisis is a crisis that we need to get ahead of. We had a bigger foreclosure crisis back in the 2000s. I think with COVID, we need to make sure we're really paying attention to how the foreclosure issues are going to look post-COVID. We need to make sure we're working to help families modify their loans with banks so that they can stay in their homes. But then there's other things like tenants who are being priced out of our city, and tenants need protection. So there are a number of
protections, Rob, because there's something pending right now to extend the moratorium on evictions and foreclosures beyond the current one, which I think expires in October. Would you favor something like that?
Yeah, I absolutely would. So the governor extended it to October. Representative Connolly and Rep. Chairman Honan have a bill that would extend the moratorium on evictions to a year after the end of the declaration of the emergency. So let's say on January 1st, the governor ended the COVID emergency. For 1 more year, it would put those protections in place for tenants to be able to make sure that they stay in their homes. I absolutely support that. Their bill also provides relief for landlords by setting up a fund that would help landlords too, who are being impacted by the COVID crisis and their rent. So that's a bill I would absolutely support. There's other bills that are pending up in the legislature now that are critical. One is a package for the city of Boston to give us more control out of our IDP and linkage money. It would allow us to give us local control to let the city of Boston change the rates when needed and actually bake it into the zoning code so that it was a permanent thing. That's hugely important to provide affordable housing. I also support bills that are pending, like right to counsel. So when a tenant goes to court, they have a right to get counsel, someone who will be there to provide the counsel in court necessary. That will level the playing field for tenants who have to go to court when facing eviction. There's also bills around right to purchase. So tenants who are in a building that may be either foreclosed on or they may be losing the building, they should have the right to be able to purchase the building as well. And so there are many bills in the State House, but it has to tackle the entirety of the issue of more affordable homeowners, more affordable rental, more affordable for seniors, more home ownership opportunities for people in our city, and protections for tenants.
Schools, you've worked in the school department. I think you're endorsed by the Boston Teachers Union, and
Yep.
you got this question about reopening. As a state legislator, how do you see yourself helping to make the best of that?
Yeah, so, the decisions that, first of all, let me also say, not only am I endorsed by the Boston Teachers Union, which I'm so proud of, but I'm a parent of 3 Boston public school children. And so we're looking at this issue the same way many families all across the 14th Suffolk are looking at it, and all across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the city of Boston. We want to make sure, first and foremost, that schools, if we go back to school, schools are safe for my children and for all the children of the city of Boston. No decisions have been made yet. I think we're looking at all of the models of how we have to do that, but it has to be based on science. It has to be based on data, and it has to be based on what we're hearing from the Boston Public Health Commission, Chief Martinez at Health and Human Services, as well as what we're hearing from the CDC. So as a state representative, I'm going to be working very closely with my colleagues in the State House, holding the state accountable to make sure they're providing the necessary guidance and direction in a timely manner to school districts all around the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, that they're providing the resources necessary, that Boston gets its fair share of the resources being directed to the state from the federal government, being an advocate on the federal government level to make sure that they're putting out financial relief packages that come back to help the municipalities. And when that does come back, making sure that the state reallocates those resources fairly, particularly looking at the population of the students we serve in the Boston Public Schools. We have obviously high rates of students with special needs. We have high rates of students who are English language learners. And the Commonwealth of Massachusetts needs to factor in the populations of the kids we're serving when they're making their decisions, when they're allocating resources, when they're creating public policy around that.
In this race, I think there's probably a lot of agreement among the candidates around police reform, but I think there's one area where there's some disagreement, and that's around limiting the legal protection for police officers, individual officers, called qualified immunity. Do you think there should be some changes to that, or should we pretty much stick with what's there already?
So I'm opposed to eliminating qualified immunity. I think it's a very slippery slope to go down. There are huge issues about that. One is in terms of how this will impact all of our public employees, including police officers. The qualified immunity issue, I think, is so complex that I think it should be taken out of the bill. The House bill talks about having a commission to actually study it because of its complexity and make recommendations next year to the new legislature about what they want to do. I think that it would have an enormously negative impact on our public employees, many who work so tirelessly and so hard. We don't know the ramifications of that. We don't know the ramifications of what it will mean for municipalities in terms of lawsuits. In most cases, municipalities will have to indemnify those who lose their qualified immunity and are found guilty. Are cities and towns prepared to do that? Do we have the budgets for that, for the amount of lawsuits that will come? It's important to remember that qualified immunity is not absolute immunity. And under the existing qualified immunity law, people can still be civilly sued when they knowingly break the law or violate someone's civil rights. The definition of qualified is limited. It's limited immunity, and it doesn't prevent those public employees who knowingly violate the law from being targeted by lawsuits. So to just wipe it out completely would have an enormous impact on teachers, firefighters, EMTs, and all of the many public employees who serve so nobly and do the right thing every single day. So we do have differences with that. I am not in favor of eliminating qualified immunity. I think it's a mistake. And I think that we should, really understand the issue better before eliminating that.
We don't have a whole lot of time. I know a couple of things you're working on. You'd like to see a more robust planning process for development pretty much throughout the district, but also on land owned by the state, the Department of Conservation and Recreation. Briefly, why is that so important to the district?
Yeah, so we're having, I like to say that developers are finding out what we already know in the 14th Suffolk. This is the greatest community in the city of Boston to live in. We have tons of public open space and a lot of other open space. And so we have a lot of development projects coming down the pipeline in our community, but we don't have a thoughtful plan of what that development is going to look like. Most other neighborhoods around the city who've gone through what we're going through have a planning process, working with the BPDA in the city to really create a blueprint moving forward about what the future of development will look like. I'm the only candidate in this race who's called for a master plan to be started by the Boston Planning Development Agency. I'm the candidate who has the relationships to be able to get that done. I will work with the mayor and the BPDA to get a planning study started immediately, because we need a thoughtful approach to development here in the 14th Suffolk. One that's driven by the community, one that's transparent, and one that puts sort of the parameters around where we want development, where it's appropriate, where we want to protect open space. And that leads to the amount of DCR space we have.